All right, well, welcome back. And we're here to talk to an old friend of mine and an old friend of Louisville Visual Art, Dennis Whitehouse, who had taught art for Jefferson County Public Schools for over 30 years. He retired and then he kept teaching. We'll ask him about that a little bit later. He also taught in our children's fine art class program for a number of years. And he's been retired from all that for a while, but he's shown up on my radar again when I saw that he was showing work at Moremen Gallery as a part of the New Year, New Artists, New Work exhibit, which is now opened there. So I'm really happy to have a chance to talk with Dennis Whitehouse again. Hi, Dennis.
Well, how you doing, Keith?
I'm doing okay. So let's start with, tell me about the work that is on the walls at Moremen Gallery. If people go, of course, we want them all to go and look at art in person. What are they going to see when they encounter your work in that space right now?
Well, there's 8 pieces, 2 portraits, and then 6 nudes. They're done from life and with a palette knife. And well, the palette,
all knife.
Well, there's a little bit of brushwork, but very little. The palette knife gives you, it keeps you from going to detail. You can do wider areas. You can put more paint on the surface. It gives round objects flat areas which create form, and it's sort of spontaneous. You get a chance to work over the whole surface at the same time.
Interesting. I mean, I'm familiar with that technique, but it doesn't seem like a lot of people are using it. I mean, I think that I feel like when I look at a lot of painters now, you see that the knife comes in and gets used, but not doesn't dominate application in the way it seems to with your work.
Well, you can have a cleaner color with a palette knife when you mix with a palette knife, and color is important. A lot of people today are using overheads. They're not working from life, and so it lends itself more to detail, which I'm trying to get away from.
Sure.
Well, detail flattens things out.
Yeah. Well,
and I'm interested in form and composition.
Sure. You know, it's interesting because one of the things I saw, I was there the other night looking at the work, and you know, it's very clear what your subject matter is, but I found that a lot of the depth, and I saw form in the figures, but a lot of the depth of the composition is not the form, but you're developing space in a certain way. There was the one particular, I think that strikes me that way was there was a reclining nude and her back is to us, but we see her looking into a mirror.
Yeah, we set up, our studio has lots of paintings started, and we set up just numerous, and a lot of times the background, except maybe in that case, is to help paint the foreground.
Right.
You can paint the back. You can paint the foreground by putting something in the background. We have a tendency to let things go. I like to paint where I just put things down that are interesting to me, and I'm done. I don't want to continue. And so we have a lot of unfinished pieces, and a lot of those pieces that you saw were unfinished.
Well, which begs the question, I mean, when is a piece finished?
Well, some people never finish a piece. You could work on a piece forever if you wanted to.
Right. So do you just have to decide, how do you decide to walk away from a piece? Do you just decide I could keep working on it, but now I feel all right? Or is it's the deadline, I got to take the paintings to the gallery?
Well, some of that maybe, but most of those paintings, well, half of them anyway, were finished before I was asked. I wasn't asked but a few weeks ago if I wanted to be in the show. And those paintings were already, the one with the red background, the one that you were talking about, I just put in the red background. It was already finished.
Okay.
And then one of the portraits was already finished, and so was the reclining figure with the yellow. It was already finished. So there was 4, maybe 5 paintings were already done. Yeah, for the show. And the others were almost done.
And so as a painter, have you always been so interested in human figures and portraits and things like that? Or do you ever paint abstractly?
Well, the thing is, I think my approach is abstract, but
Yeah.
I paint still life and I paint landscapes. I was going to Maine painting landscapes, seascapes in Maine. But the person that I studied under, that was at Brooklyn College, Leonard Anderson, was a figure painter. And during his classes, that's all we painted was the figure.
Right.
And then I ran the modeling sessions there. And so the interest was for the figure.
Now, I know from my firsthand experience when you were teaching children's fine art classes, and I was around you, you would use models with the kids, clothed models, but I'm not sure, is that a common thing for students that age to be working with live models a lot?
Well, the thing is, if it's almost like a contradiction. If you're just painting doesn't matter what you're painting. You're putting color and you're putting value onto a surface. And of course that has form and the surface is flat. You almost have to get away from naming what you're painting if you truly want to look at the value and the color, and just paint what you see. I noticed that when we painted with kids, it wasn't quality that we were looking for. For example, when I was at Ballard, we got rid of the cabinets, put in stalls, put our kids in stalls, gave them a topic, say, do a self-portrait, and they would paint a self-portrait. Well, we had a poll with all these names of artists, and we just tell them, we go by and say, you look like this guy. You look like Leonard Anderson. Look up Leonard Anderson. They would look up Leonard Anderson. Or you look like you like Picasso, although I don't think I ever said Picasso. And they would look that up. And we'd give them a Mac and they would look that up. We weren't looking for quality of work from any student. We were looking for numbers. How many things could you paint? And the quality came by itself. As long as you're looking and painting. And one of the main things also was to keep them away from pictures, because that was a slow way of painting. I think it's more like a left brain type painting. You're not looking at the right side. You're not using your right side anymore. You're painting detail. You're painting spot. It's like you're painting an apple when you put the white spot on first, and then you paint around it. You're not working everything at the same time. And pretty soon, I mean, you can watch kids that I used to go in this one class, it was at a college class, and where I was teaching, and I'd go in and I'd see kids lined up to use the overhead. Then you got to say to yourself, can you paint from life? Most of those kids couldn't.
Because it's like you're copying. You're being a copyist.
Yes. Yes.
Technical thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you should be able to paint a figure that's in front of you.
Right.
Or a landscape that's in front of you, or a still life. And if you can't, I mean, I've had students that we taught that went away and came back and never used the figure again, and they wouldn't paint with us because they couldn't. So they went, because they weren't using the right side of their brain anymore.
Well, and because I remember some of these conversations, and there's a lot of things that people can read about this too. What you're trying to do is develop their way of see things differently, and to draw or to paint through a real observation that makes their brain work differently. Right? Well, it's that translate what they see.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, if your brain's divided left and right, you don't want them to use the mathematical side of the brain to draw or to visually look at something. Right. You want them to look with their creative side.
Right.
And understand, drawing from life, you can look at anything and see facets of things, and the next day you come in, and you can see more, and you can take things out or leave things in. If you're looking at a picture, you have what you have. And a lot of people just simply trace off and fill in. We had a student to go to Maryland College of Institute of Art, and she came back and told us that they had a model set up. The model's 10 feet away from them. The student beside her took a picture of the model and copied off the phone. The model is right there. So it's,
Well, and I guess I wonder why a teacher lets somebody do that. But
well, I can think of a couple of reasons. One, they may just not know any better.
Yeah.
Two, maybe they don't know how to draw themselves. Three, it's easier to hand a picture to someone and just, or do a grid from it.
Whoever said teaching was easy.
But it's not easy. It's not, it's not easy.
Now, when I introduced you, I said you taught for over 30 years because you were telling me in the introduction. So you taught at Ballard for about 35 years and then you retired. So you explained this to me. So then you retired, but then you kept working as a teacher. So what were you doing then in retirement when you were teaching?
Well, I taught at a lot of different schools and public schools, and I taught for about 10 years and then decided I wanted an MFA so I could work at maybe on a college level.
Yeah.
So I found the teacher I liked the best, and it was Leonard Anderson at Brooklyn, and I went to Brooklyn. And I stayed in New York for about 3 years, and then I came home and they offered me a job at one of the high schools, and I took that job. But since 1975, I retired in 2010, and I stayed on at Ballard till about 2017, and I taught part-time there, juniors and seniors. And it's a big program. I would say, 6 teachers, 900 kids going through that program. It's a very big program. And, but I also taught at U of L, Kentucky, I was an adjunct there, taught 1 or 2 classes a semester for years. And then taught a drawing class and a painting class over the Kentucky School of Art, and then at LVA. So I'm teaching a long time. But
you're not teaching now.
No, no, I'm not.
You miss it?
No, I'm enjoying just painting, and I'm painting with Daryl Smith. He retired the same year I did at Ballard High School. And
you guys share a studio space.
It's his space, but he shares it with me. And he's a good painter, and it's fun painting with him.
Are you ever competitive because you're in the same space together?
We paint differently. Okay. We're not competitive at all. He paints a certain way, and I paint a certain way, and he's got some very nice paintings.
Do you influence each other at all, do you think?
Well, I think we make each other work, and or we encourage each other to work. I think he likes to work more than I do. So he encourages me to work.
How steady is your practice? Do you paint every day, or just a certain number of days each week, or?
I painted a lot this last 3 weeks. I painted every day this last 3 weeks, but normally I put in 2 to 3 hours a week, not very much. And I spent a lot of time on, I've got a potter's wheel, and I like to do pottery. And so I spent a lot of time almost every day down the potter's room.
Okay. So then maybe that's the next exhibit.
Well, maybe. I've had a few, but I would like to do in pottery more, instead of usable things like dinnerware and stuff. I would rather do something that still throws, but it's more like art. Yeah, that would be more interesting.
How long have you been working with pottery? Have you done that a long time, or just finding it?
No, about 3 years ago I started.
Just started 3 years ago.
Yeah, but I took a class with Tom Marsh many years ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it back then, and I had been using some pottery in the classroom for all these years. So
now, I'm always interested in why an artist who's so focused on one medium switches to a different thing. I mean, is it what was it in your mind that made you think I want to focus on pottery right
Well, my wife bought me a potter's wheel. but other than that, it's very physical. It's
That's a great
hands-on.
That's a great answer though, because I think everybody always imagines the muse visits the artist and that it's some sort of mystical process. And a lot of times it's really motivated by very practical concerns or just, you know, William Duffy talks about how he was driving downtown and a car had jumped the curb and hit a building. There was a big piece of limestone there that this car had knocked out of a building. And he went over and said, does anybody need this? Can I take it? And he went home and started carving on it with a screwdriver and a hammer. I mean, it's like why things happen or can sometimes be very offbeat and very, so your wife bought you a pottery wheel. That's a great reason to start.
Well, you know what? You can at least wash the clay out of your clothes. We were going through my shirts the other day, and most of them are paint shirts.
Yeah.
Almost all of them are paint shirts. So, but
you have a wardrobe just for that, right?
Oh yeah, I couldn't believe, and she'll get me a shirt and say, "You can't wear that to paint in. That's to go out in."
Well, okay, so we're about out of time, Dennis. It's been a lot of fun talking to you and catching up a little bit. Hope to see you again outside of doing an interview. But just to remind everybody, Dennis Whitehouse has work right now at Moremen Gallery. I think through the middle of February. There's plenty of opportunity to go see it. Part of the New Year, New Artist, New Work exhibit at Moremen Gallery.
Thanks, Greg. I like being called a new artist. That's great.
Right. All of those things apply to you. So, all right. Well, thanks a lot, Dennis.
Thank you. I'm signing off.